All right, welcome everyone. Sorry to call you on Sunday afternoon, but open source rolls on, the day goes on, the show goes on. Welcome to HacktoberFest with PEC ACM. This is PEC ACM's part of the worldwide celebration of open source culture, which it was conceived a few years back and right now is powered by Intel and DigitalOcean, right? Now, I would like to call Nishant to take over from here, and he will tell you what all you can expect and what do we have in our bucket. All right,
All
Nishant.
right. Thanks for that, Amrit. So I'd like to welcome everyone of for this Fest event organized by PEC ACM Student Chapter in collaboration with the Microsoft Learn Student Ambassador community. So before we dive deep into the topics we have for today, I'd just like to show you the agenda, what we all have planned for you this afternoon. So first of all, we'll go over intro to open source, the what and the why behind open source. Then we'll go into a demonstration of a PR and a live PR where everyone commits, which means you commit to the PRs on a demo repository that we've made for you to get you started into open source contributions. Then we go over what is Hacktoberfest and why are we organizing this whole event. Finally, we move on to Spamtoberfest and good first issues and more, which are topics of recent interest that you need to know about and you need to be aware about. So without further ado, let's kick off this amazing afternoon. So first, let's just introduce open source to you. So when we come to this concept of Hacktoberfest or contributions, the first thing that must come into everyone's mind is, well, what is open source and why should we even care? So according to Red Hat, which is one of the biggest organizations related to this, open source is a term that originally referred to open source software and is code that is designed to be publicly accessible. That is, anyone can see, modify, and distribute the code as they see fit. Now, open source software is developed in a decentralized and collaborative way. So instead of proprietary software where just one organization makes everything and packages it and uh, gives it out to its consumers, in this, a lot of collaborators and developers come together to develop or produce software that can be used by a lot of people. Open source software tends to be cheaper and more flexible and has more longevity and its proprietary peers because frankly it's developed by everyone, so it would continue for generations to come. And that is the beauty of open source software, which is something that the PEC ACM Student Chapter is really excited to introduce every one of you to. Now, you must be wondering how all of this started. Well, to give you a basic history, the according to the rise of open source, the open source software movement, which grew out of a related free software movement, which was back in the 80s when proprietary software was the only thing around. Richard Stallman, a programmer at MIT Artificial Intelligence Lab, said he would create a free alternative to Unix operating system, and then owned by AT&T. And Stallman dubbed his alternative GNU, which is a recursive acronym for GNU's not Unix. So that is a small history as to how open source came into being. Now, as of yet, there are a huge amount of open source platforms and open source programs for developers to contribute to and be a part of. As you can see on the screen, there are a good number of examples there. Outreachy, Google Summer of Code, Google Coding. At PEC ACM chapter, we ourselves aim that we'll take you on this journey to bring open source community in our college and bring open source contributions in our college. And to start off, the first and the best place would be Hacktoberfest. So again, now that poses the question: why should you contribute to open source? So what is the concept behind contributing to open source at all? Well, frankly speaking, when it comes to open source, there are a lot of factors to consider, right? So there are some microeconomic motivations. You get to shift from low value work to high value work. So that is one thing. Uh, if you move on further, there is a thrill of being part of something that is bigger than you. You contribute to organizations, contribute to codes of developers and collaborators that is way bigger than an individual scope. You frankly make code for the whole world to use, and that feeling in itself is really motivating for a lot of people to develop and contribute to open source. There is this lower total cost of ownership when it comes to open source. Links of all these resources that we pull out for you regarding open source can be found later on in the comment and the descriptions. Um, you get to know the modern software development practices through this without being in an actual organization. You get to collaborate with a lot of people, and moreover, you get to learn how to develop organization level software, but by being at the comfort of your own place and by just being yourself, not being part of an actual organization, just being yourself and just contributing with the community. So those are some of the benefits of open source, and that is why it has been seeing a lot of gaining a lot of momentum in recent times. So to kick off this journey and to get really into this, I'd like to call upon Saksham and Hamza to give you a demonstration of a pull request, which is one of the major things of Hacktoberfest. We'll go over what is Hacktoberfest in its totality as we go on with this session. But first of all, I'd like to call on Hamza and Saksham to give you the basics of how to make your first PR.
Thanks a lot, Nishan. So first, let me present my screen and tell me if it's visible or
All
not.
right.
So is my screen visible right now?
Yes, skin is visible.
Okay. So hello everyone. For the purpose of kicking off this Hacktoberfest event, we have actually come up with a demo repository. And in this demo repository, first we'll show you what are the steps to make a pull request. And after that, we encourage each and every one of you to go to this repository and try to make a pull request of your own. So first, let me also copy the link for this repository and put it on the comment section of the Google Docs. And there it is. Okay. So talking about this repository is basically written in Python, and it is a simple server written in Flask. And when you open this repository or when you run this server, it simply displays "Welcome to Hacktoberfest," right? And as we can see, there is a single issue over here. If I click on this issue, so the owner of this repository, which is Hamza, is requesting us that we need to add another root known as new feature. So we'll click on that, and when we click on that, we see that we need to add a get request root for new feature that simply returns a string. This root was added by and the name of the contributor. Okay, so this is a fairly simple issue, and so let's work on this. So this repository is available on Hamza's GitHub page, and so that this repository is also available on my own GitHub account. The first step that I need to do is click on fork. So it is this button over here on the top right. So I'll click on fork. So it will just take a few seconds, right? So now this repository is available on my GitHub page, and you can verify that by seeing your name on the top, and below it is written fork from this Baba Hacktoberfest, right? Uh, Now what I'll do, in order for me to work on my favorite ID, I would also like that a local copy of this is created on my local PC. So for that, what I'll do is I'll click on this green button called code, and this is the link to the repo, and I'll click on the copy option. So I have opened up my bash, and in the desired directory, I'll simply type git home, and I'll copy the link of the repository and press enter. So it will just take a few seconds, and a copy of that will be created in my PC. Let's take a look over here, and here it is. So first, let me change my directory to HacktoberTest. Right? So now I'm in HacktoberTest. Now, before moving forward, I need to tell another thing, and that is the concept of Git remotes. So if you do Git remote -v, so this will basically display two URLs, and that is named origin. So remote is basically all the other locations in the internet, all the other servers or web pages where this repository is hosted. As we all know that a copy of this repository is also available on my GitHub page. So that is why it's saying https github.com section 117. So this is what it means. Now another thing, uh, if I do git pull right now, so what will happen is that whatever changes I make to this repo on my own GitHub repository, and then I pull it, those will be available to my PC. But in the meantime, this repository is also owned by someone else, and there can be a chance that some changes are made over there. So if I do git pull right now, then those changes won't be visible, won't come into my local PC. So to ensure that even those changes become visible, I need to write another command, and that is git remote add upstream. Upstream is basically the name for the link from where we originally took fork the repository. So I'll go to the original repository. I click on the code section and I'll click on copy. The point to be noted is that this link is not of the forked repository in my repo. It's the original repository owned by the owner, right? So I'll copy this over here and I'll paste this. So if I do git remote -v now, you can see that there are now two remotes, origin and upstream. So we are good to go. Now let's open our app.py file. So here is spider. Open. Let me go to HacktoberTest app.py. Right. So if I run this currently, we'll see that the Flask server has been set up. And if I go to Chrome and click on, sorry, go to localhost 5500, you'll see that Hello HacktoberFest is visible. Now, if I add to it new feature, you'll see that this URL is not found. So this is the feature that the owner of the repository, that is Hamza, was asking us to add. So to add this, what we'll do is we just need to add a couple of lines. That is at the rate app dot the new URL or root we need to add, and that is new features, right? And I'll say def new feature. And when I go to this route, I want the following message to be displayed. Return. Um, this route was added by, was added by, and the name of the person. First, let me integrate the server. Changes. See, and we're using its new feature. So I've made the relevant changes. Uh, Now I'll run the file again. So let me run the server. The server is running again. I go to first localhost and hello HacktoberFest is visible. Now I go to the new feature branch, and as you can see, this has been added. This route was added by Saksham. So we have made these changes, but these changes are still not being tracked by Git, and we can see that by clicking on Git status. So it basically says that we have modified app.py. So to be able to, so to allow to Git to track these changes, we need to add and commit. So we'll say git add app.py and say git like -n added the added a new route new features, right, and save that. So now these changes are being tracked by Git on my local PC. But if I go to my own GitHub repository, we'll see that the changes that I have made are yet not visible over here. So for those changes to be visible over here, I need to make enter another command that is called git push origin and master. So this will just take a few seconds, and yeah, it's done. So if I reload now, you can clearly see that these changes have now been added. So I click on back, and so now these changes are also visible on my version of the GitHub repository on my own GitHub page. But the thing that is missing is that I have now I have to ask the original owner of this repository to merge those changes into his own repository. And for to do that, we'll take the help of pull request, and that is this button over here. We'll click on pull request, and it's saying able to merge. Below it is in green over here. It is the lines that we have added, and I'll click on create pull request. So added a new features. I also added a comment. I worked on the issue that was specified. Please have a look, and I'll create this pull request. Okay.
So once Saksham creates this pull request, Saksham,
I'll stop presenting.
I'll share my screen. Yeah, sure thing.
You can present them. Yeah.
Yeah. So now once Saksham creates his pull request, I'm seeing two pull requests over here. Okay, I'm going to acknowledge. I see all the pull requests coming over here. The owner of the repository and everyone can see all of the pull requests that are available. So I click Saksham's pull request. I see what changes he has made, right? I know that these are the features that I requested in that particular issue and they're matching with the objective that I originally aimed for. So I'll go ahead and merge this pull request because none of these changes are conflicting with any of the existing code that is present over there, and I merge it. So pull requests can only be merged by the owners of the repositories, right? And now because his pull request has been merged into the master branch of the repository, you can find his root present there in the actual repository. This is a very simple example of what happens. Usually what will end up happening is you'll have to read the contributors.md file of a particular repository to understand what the steps are of contributing, because a lot of different repositories use various different tools for setting up that pipeline, because they have automated tests and things like that that help determine the health of a repository and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's how we'll be creating. That's how you should be creating a pull request. I already see a pull request from someone who's uh, watching the stream. What I'll do now is instead I'll during in a while I'll create an issue where the goal will be to create a route with local slash your name, just your name, and then that returns a string. This feature was contributed by this, just so that you can get an feel for how things work and how to create a pull request in general. And I'll merge those into the main repo. Okay, Saksham?
Yeah, it's good. So now we really encourage you to go ahead and make some pull requests and see for yourself what you can do. And now I will hand over this to Nishan, who will explain a little more about how to do this. Over to you, Nishan.
All right. Thanks for that, Hamza and Saksham. So that was a great demo of how are we going to go about the whole thing. So now getting back to where what we started with. Now let's go over the uh, go over what exactly is Hacktoberfest. So I'll present my screen once again so that everyone gets to know why are we doing this whole event. And later on, when we plan out to do the pull request with you, we'll go deeper into the details of this. So I hope my screen is visible now. All right. So, what exactly is Hacktoberfest? So we've started with something and we've seen what a pull request is, but what exactly is this and why are we so excited about this? So, basically, Hacktoberfest is an event organized by DigitalOcean. In fact, Hacktoberfest is a month-long virtual festival event to celebrate open source contributions, and this has been totally presented by DigitalOcean, as I mentioned, along with Intel and Dev. So Hacktoberfest is one of the easiest ways to get into open source. Now, during the entire month of October 2020, all you have to do is contribute to any open source project and open at least 4 pull requests. And yes, well, any project and any kind of contributions, you don't need to be an expert in programming or coding. What you need to focus on is making valid and allowed and accepted contributions to repositories which Hamza and Saksham will go over in a while. Now, as we go along with Hacktoberfest, so according to their own website, the whole Hacktoberfest is inspired by you, the community, through your actions and stories. Now, there are 3 basic points of Hacktoberfest. Everyone is welcome, which means throughout the world. Now, currently, the participants of Hacktovers are represented by 151 countries and thousands of unique skill sets. The program welcomes everyone already who's been a part of open source software and who is interested in beginning. Um, Quantity is fun in Hacktoberfest, but quality is key. Now, participating in Hacktoberfest leads to personal growth, professional opportunities, and community building, which is something that the PEC ACM chapter, student chapter itself, wants to focus on and will keep on bringing you more content to improve our community and make our community stronger. However, the whole Hacktoberfest begins with meaningful contributions to open source software. Now finally, it's short-term action with a long-term impact. As I mentioned earlier, the thrill of contributing to something for the greater good, which is larger than yourself, is just on the next level. And in the open source software community, we are standing on the shoulders of those who came before us, just like Amrit said. Your participation itself will have a lasting effect on people and technology long after October. Hacktoberfest is a voyage, not a race. Now, as we go along with the whole Hacktoberfest concept, we dive into the concept that they mention on the site regarding the participation details and the rules. So, in a small way of flow charts and control flow diagrams, the participation details include that. Pull requests can be made in participating GitHub repositories and projects. Maintainers, just like Hamza showed you being a demo maintainer, can opt in to participate by classifying their projects with the Hacktoberfest topic. So if you're watching this stream and you're someone who has some really good repositories and you want people to contribute to it, you can mark your repositories as Hacktoberfest with a Hacktoberfest label and people can contribute to it. Now, your pull request will count towards your participation if they are in a repository with Hacktoberfest. And once they have been merged or approved by a maintainer or labeled as Hacktoberfest accepted. Now, there are some technicalities related to this regarding spam PRs and all, which Hamza will go over in a while. Additionally, any pull request with Hacktoberfest accepted label submitted to any public GitHub repository with or without the Hacktoberfest topic will be considered valid for Hacktoberfest. You can sign up anytime between October 1 and October 31, just to be sure to sign up on the official Hacktoberfest website for your pull request to count. Now that for all those who have joined the meeting link, I hope you all have reached here by registering through the PEC ACM Student Chapter link that we provided you for this Hacktoberfest event. Um, Now, moving on to the rules of Hacktoberfest. Now, Hacktoberfest, in its own way, gives the rules in the form of a code. Now, your PRs count if it is submitted during the month of October and submitted in a public repository, and the PR is labeled as Hacktoberfest accepted by the maintainer or submitted in a repo with Hacktoberfest topic. Now, there are some quality standards that you need to take care of when you submit the PRs or the pull request. Hamza will go into details of these, but some of these basics are you need to focus on the quality. Just for the sake of participating in Hacktoberfest, you shouldn't make spammy PRs. Now, pull requests that are automated, example, scripted opening pull requests to remove white spaces, fix typos, or optimize images. Don't make disruptive PRs, or don't make PRs that are more of a hindrance or rather than helping them out. And definitely do not make a PR to contribute to +1 your pull request count for the month of October. And those are the basic participation details and rules for Hacktoberfest. Now, there was something in the previous slide that I did not mention, and which is in fact the one of the most famous parts of Hacktoberfest is the swag kits. So I'd like if one of the moderators could put in the chat what are the swags for this times of Hacktoberfest. But in an event like Hacktoberfest, you have to make 4 PRs, and on making 4 successful pull requests, you get the official Hacktoberfest T-shirt along with a bunch of stickers and swags. Now, there are some listed organizations for which if you contribute you can get their own swags as well, which through the month of October on our official Discord channel and through our YouTube channel we'll be telling you about again and again. So this is a huge incentive and a huge thing for anyone who wants to get started here. Now, as mentioned, now we'd like to go into a message from DigitalOcean's CEO about Hacktoberfest. I hope this is audible. Hamza, is this audible?
I don't hear anything yet.
All right. Okay.
Nishant, yeah, I don't think it's audible.
All right. Okay. So we'll go into this message later on. Now I'd like to move on to Hamza, who will be going into the details of Spamtoberfest, your good first issues, and his own experience as an open source contributor. So on to you,
Um,
Hamza.
yeah, sure. I'll present my screen if you can get up.
All right.
All right. So if you do a quick Google of Spamtoberfest, you'll come across a few commits like these, right? So these commits are basically made by people who are in the rush to get all the swag kits that uh, Nishant mentioned. While the swag kits are cool and they're interesting, they're not the central focus of Hacktoberfest, right? A lot of people, for the free T-shirts and things like that, they end up creating poor commits like this, which end up uh, spamming the feed of the person who owns the repository. Now, of course, for a small repository like the demo repository that we showed, if something like that happens, it's not that big of an issue because it's not an actual repository. But once there is a repository that is being used for important things all around the world by various developers and various APIs, at that point, if your spammy PR starts hiding the important pull requests and issues that are being raised by developers all over the world that are contributing to a particular repository, it becomes a huge problem, right? DigitalOcean recognized this problem, and recently what they ended up doing was, earlier what you could do is you could just contribute to any random public repository, and you would get basically the points. You're supposed to make 4 pull requests to be eligible to win a T-shirt, or donate or plant a tree. I think that's the other option that you can do. But now what they've done is only repositories that have opted in for Hacktoberfest, and Hacktoberfest has seen that it aligns with the community guidelines. Only those repositories and the PRs that are committed to them that have either been merged or approved by the owners of the repository will be considered. So even if you make a pull request to a repository, that's all well and good with Hacktoberfest guidelines and things like that, but it's not something that they need or something that they are going to add to their software, then it's not being counted. So a bunch of things have changed because of this whole issue. If you look at how to create a good pull request, well, of course, the example that we showed you earlier was a very, very basic example. Usually, when you're creating a pull request, you're adding a litany of features to the particular repository, or you may be fixing an issue. What happens is all the different parts of a project are interlinked together. So even a small change in one thing can affect all the other parts of the software with a trickle down effect. So what you have to do is you have to end up writing detailed pull requests. I'll give you an example of a pull request that I created for a repository called TARDIS earlier this year. So TARDIS is basically software that is used for analysis of supernovas, right? So this simulates supernovas, and you can do spectral analysis of things like that. Anyways, that's not important. The important thing is what the pull request looks like. So if you see here, uh, what I had to do was I had to test basically the parallel instances of running TARDIS using a new framework called Dask. So this was something that was not initially there in the project, and now to see if it was how to port it over to Dask, this was what the pull request was doing. So you can see I provided a description. I provided about what a description about the various changes that I've made in this pull request. I've added my Gitter username. Most repositories will end up having a particular text channel. It could be Freenode and IRC or something like that, where you can talk to the repository owners. So if you ever run into any kind of issue, if you're having trouble understanding what a particular piece of code does, you can always reach to them on Gitter or whatever IRC network they are present on. File descriptions to show what a particular file does, right? Because you have to look at this from the perspective of a repository owner. They don't know you, they don't know what code you've written, they just know that you've tried fixing their problem. How and how it's structured, all those things have to be explained by you. Motivation and context, etc., 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 etc. So you'll see it's all super detailed. I have to go into every single piece of code and then explain everything. And still, a repository owner may suggest some changes, right? So in this case, they said, please clear your PR of unnecessary files. So there were a bunch of files, even in this case, that were not needed by this particular issue. And then you can, of course, just commit to your fork and then gets added to your pull request, and so on and so forth. Another example of this is a pull request that I did recently. In this case, it's basically similar to the thing that we did recently when we were adding a get route. Instead, this is a Node.js application. So what we ended up doing was share a screenshot to show that it's working and basically explain how everything works, right? Once you do that, the repository owners will then provide you with more information on what to do next and so on and so forth, right? Because they do have all of these, as I mentioned earlier, these automated pipelines that check the health of the application. They manage all the commits and they manage the documentation all on its own, right? Most repositories, when you go to them, have this local setup or a contribution.md page, which goes through the process of how you can set up a development environment on your local machine and what are the rules they're following along with their are they following for their open source contributors, right? So they'll usually have a template for their pull request, so you won't have to actually manually write down all of these things on your own, right? You'll just have to fill up a sort of questionnaire in Markdown. Markdown is basically a formatting language that is used very often on GitHub. It's quite helpful. It's easy to. It's like it takes 5 minutes to learn or something. So it's something that's good to have. The thing is, Hacktoberfest isn't just for you guys to come and contribute just for this month alone. While Hacktoberfest is dedicated to ensuring more and more people get into open source, it's not the end game. Hacktoberfest is just the start. Once you're done with Hacktoberfest, you can once you're done with all the 4 PRs and everything, you'll get a hang for open source contribution. It's not always going to be as simple as fixing 1 line of code or 2 lines of code. You might have to go through a very large code base to understand how everything works, right? Even if you know a particular language like Python and JavaScript, you might look at a Python and JavaScript GitHub repository and think that it's completely alien to what you know. And that's mostly because of frameworks and things like that. So you can end up learning by doing. So you can see how things are structured in the real world, how code is structured, how much of it is boilerplate code, things like that. So you really have to you'll basically flex that muscle of understanding large complex systems, right, from simplicity. And the thing is, you don't have to do it alone, because a lot of people like you are contributing to those repositories, and all of them go to the repository owners for any questions that they have. You can even raise an issue for a question if you want, right? The issue doesn't actually have to be something related to code. It can just be a question too. You have to add the question tag to it. um, and you can ask them about whatever doubts you have, and they'll be happy to help you through the process, right? So once you're done with Hacktoberfest and everything, where do we go next? How do we start contributing to open source next? Well, you have websites like First Timers Only. So First Timers Only is the place where you can go and do your first sort of contribution to open source. They're basically kind of like dummy repositories. Well, not exactly dummy repositories, but they're repositories of that do not actually contain code, but it's a good practice for your PR. Another one is, of course, Open Source Friday, that used to be active. I'm not very sure if it's still active or not, but mostly what people usually use is something like code triage. So if you've been to the Hacktoberfest page, you've seen something like this, right? You've seen a bunch of random repositories that pop up along with their with the language assigned to them, so you can sort of pick and choose which repositories you want to commit to. um, Code triage is pretty similar, except they don't show the language itself, except they show the repository, so you can start. Most open source contributors that I know don't contribute to more than 3 repositories in their entire lifetime. The thing is, you have to pick one repository and you have to understand it really well in order to be able to do contributions to that particular repo. Issuehub.io is another great resource that where you can just click which labels you want and which language you want, and it will show you all the issues and repositories that are available for it. So make good PRs, make thoughtful PRs, try to understand that every person involved in this whole open source ecosystem is, at the end of the day, a person, and you have to be able to explain everything that you do. And yeah, that's it. Happy open source contribution, and I'll look forward to all the work that you'll be doing.
Yeah, that's great, Hamza. And I would like to point out to all the members present here, if you have any doubt, you can feel free to just interject and ask, right? We also have the Discord server where you can uh, paste the link to your pull request that you created so that we can track the progress, right? And we are in the Discord server as well. We can help you and guide you, especially Hamza. You can all ping him as well regarding your queries regarding the quality of your PRs. We'll also be posting some links to good first issues, which you can start with. All right.
All right, so guys, I hope you liked our first session on Oktoberfest, contributing to this great organization and contributing to this great cause. So I hope you really liked being a part of this. Now our aim for this one is to um, introduce you to open source and get you started with this whole community and get you started with the whole concept of developing along with the community and going hand to hand. And maybe in the future, explore more programs like Google Summer of Code, Google Code in Outreachy, and many other programs. So, PEC ACM Student Chapter plans to hold more such events throughout October so that a good number of people from our own university can and from our own university and college can get into Hacktoberfest and open source and make valid contributions and experience the glory of open source. So this was it for our first session on Hacktoberfest, and this was our first live stream. I hope you liked it. Tell us what you felt in the comments, or how did you feel about this whole event in the Discord chat. We'll be happy to hear you out. And as Amrit said, feel free to ping any of us for any type of doubts that you have. Throughout October, we'll be maintaining the Discord server as well, and aiming that a lot of people get, if not all the four, at least one or two PRs complete and get some stickers as swags. So that was it for the first session. Thank you so much for joining in, and have a fantastic day ahead. And as Hamza said, happy hacking.
Good. Thank you. Bye.